All right, guys. First off, as always, good day. Glad you guys are here. Now, um, this video is mainly going to be talking about immigration. Now, what you're going to find out is that history does repeat itself, and we're going to be talking about that. Um, the other thing we're going to be talking about is slavery. Um, this is again, the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about in our country at that time. And the thing is, the problem is going to get bigger as you will see. And we'll be talking about some things that the slaves uh, could and could not do. Okay, so we'll be getting to that in a little bit. So first off, here is your warm up. So what do you see? Okay, now there isn't much to this picture, but look at the background, look at the forefront. What do you see? What's going on here? All right. Now, for those of you guys who don't know that little kind of cylinder looking thing, um, that is called a funnel. Okay, so what's happening there? Um, what's going on? Look at the whole picture. Okay, once you've analyzed it completely, what do you think this artist is trying to say about immigration? Okay, so once you've broken it down, go to that question. What do you see? What do you think this artist is trying to say? Okay, so once you're done, let's move on with the notes. All right, so now if you remember from our last class or last video, if you watched it, um, the North really started to get into industrialization. Now, when industrialization or factories are opening up, people are going to follow because that means there's new jobs. And that's what happens to the North. They are creating a bunch of factories, and people are coming left and right to the North for a job. You know. Now, by 1820, New York hit a milestone of 100,000 people. Now, nowadays, that doesn't sound like much. You're like, whoop, whoop, that's not even that big. But back then, that was monstrously huge because most big cities had maybe about 20 to 50,000 people. And here we are with New York reaching 100,000. Now, by 1860, right before the Civil War starts, 8 other cities in the North reach 100,000 people. Places like Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, they reach that milestone. Between 1850 and 1860, 5 million foreigners come from other countries to the United States. Now, a lot of people speculate, or the stereotype is that a lot of it was like Italians or they're English, but the truth is a lot of them were German. Yeah, yeah, that's good. Yeah, you know, so a lot of them were Germans. And the thing is, they stuck mainly to cities. Some did move to farm areas because that's what they knew, but a lot of them stayed with the city. Another stereotype is, oh, the Irish came. They were the big ones. The thing is, the Irish didn't really start coming until 1845, and that was because of the potato blight. Now, what happened with that is the main crop in Ireland was the potato because it doesn't need much to grow. Okay, it doesn't need much soil, you know, and the thing is, the ground over there is very rocky. So stuff like trees are really hard to grow everywhere, because a lot of places are rocky, and trees need deep roots, So with the rock, they really can't go deep. But with potatoes, they're just right there. They don't need much. And because of this little disease of the potatoes, this fungus type of stuff, it made the potatoes go bad, and that was a staple of their meals. So then they came to the United States because a lot of people were starving. Now, the thing is, as the city's population grew, um, the wages went down because now companies are like, well, why do I have to hire this person for like $10 an hour if I can get somebody for $5 or $3? You know, so you have to think about that. They try to take advantage of the situation where immigrants are coming in desperate for a job because they're from another place where their money more likely won't do them any good here. So they need a job quick, fast, and in a hurry because they got a family to feed, or themselves. Um, so they needed money quick, and they would take any job that paid. Now, just as there's more people coming in, there's a sudden change now in the country. For example, language. Instead of just regular standard English, now there's French, there's Spanish, there's Basque, there's Arabic, there's you know a bunch of different languages coming in now. You know, and like I said, German too. So people are like, well, why are these people coming here speaking that language? No, they should be coming here speaking English, things like that. That kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? There are some people who are just like, why are they coming over here? They should know the language here and this and that. So again, you're gonna see some things that are kind of like, wait, that's kind of happening right now. I've heard people say that on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, all that stuff. Okay. Also religions. There was Christians, but then also there was Catholics. There was Muslim. You know, uh, there was more Jewish people. So the religious views, the religious that the religions that were here in this country now expanded even more. And the thing was, cultures were different. People celebrate different things, different ways, weddings and birthdays and stuff like that. Um, Customs, um, holidays, in their culture. So it was a change, and there were some natural born citizens who were natural born, quote unquote, because, hey, I'm from here, so I'm a natural born. So some people felt like, I don't like the way things are going. It was never like this. Yes, there were. Yes, there was some, Catholics. There was some, um, you know, German people. There was some Italian or Irish or whatever. It's just now it wasn't as much. So when those people was like, oh, it wasn't like this before. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It just wasn't as much, but they were there. They were in plain sight. It's just they didn't look. But now there's an abundance of these foreigners. So now they're really starting to see it. And now they're like, oh my God, things are changing. You know. So here's my question to you. What may be some reasons for people to be concerned with immigration uh, coming or immigrants coming in the 1800s? So I kind of gave you a little hint, but I want you to really think about it. What are some actual concerns? What kind of things would they worry about? Okay. So again, like I told you, history does repeat itself. So if you hear some people saying stuff about immigration, especially nowadays, chances are they made these same arguments back then. So really think about it. What kind of stuff do people say now about immigrants coming into this country? What do they say about them? Like, what kind of bad things are they going to do? You know, or what kind of stuff will they, you know, do in this country? Um, Remember, stuff like, not everything's going to fit. So stuff like, oh, some people say, well, welfare. These people are on welfare. They didn't have welfare back then. Okay, so that won't work. But think of other stuff. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. Nativism really started to sprout at this point. Some natural born citizens felt there should be a limit. There should be a set number of immigrants who are allowed into this country. So if you remember the warm-up picture, that would be a perfect example. They were like, ugh, this is too many of them coming in. Yeah, there should be some, but only a little bit from here, a little bit from here. They preferred more Western Europeans, people like from England and France, because they were the good ones. Um, Whereas some people who were Italian or Irish, things like that, um, because a lot of them were Catholic, you're going to find out pretty soon, they didn't like them too much. Now, there was an effort to keep foreign-born people and again Catholics from being in political office. You know, now you may wonder why Catholics. There are some people who are born in this country who are Catholics. So what's up with that? The thing is, those people believe that Catholic people would bow down to the Pope and basically try to do what he says. If he told them, there should be a law in that country saying that um, the Catholic religion should be the top religion in the state, in the country, and that these people who were elected as senators or House of Representative people would be like, yeah, yeah, we should do what the Pope says. Yeah, it's ridiculous thinking, but that's what they thought back then, that American citizens would bow down to a Pope. You know, so and the other thing was they didn't want any foreign-born person to be like a senator or House of Representative. Now, again, under Article 2 of the Constitution, a president has to be born in the United States or in their territories. So obviously, a foreign-born person cannot be president, but it does not say in Article 1 of the Constitution that a senator or a House of Representative person has to be born in the United States. All it says is you have to live in that particular state that you're going to be representing. For a House of Representative person has to live there for at least 7 years, and a senator has to live in that state for at least 9 years consecutively, not 3 years here and I moved over here and then 3 years back. No, it has to be consecutive. All right. Um, Next comes this group called the American Party. Now, these guys are funny. They were formed in 1854 and they became known as the Know Nothings. Now, the reason for this is because anytime they were questioned about some type of activity, they would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I know nothing. I don't know what's going on. So, excuse me. So yeah, it was kind of like, seriously, really, really, we're gonna play that little 4-year-old game, Yeah, I don't know. I didn't do nothing. I didn't do anything. I don't know nothing. It's just really annoying, and here's these grown-ups doing that. Now, here's another thing. Unions nowadays get this bad rep. Okay, they're seen as bad, evil type of thing. All they do is they want your money, things like that. But if you have a job and you have a minimum wage, you could think a union. If you basically have like air conditioning in your workplace, good working conditions, that's a union thing. Um, if you like sick days and or comp days, or vacation days at your job, you can think a union. Because the thing is, they fought to make the workers uh, have better wages, working conditions, and benefits. You know, Again, like I said, some people try to demonize all of them. Are some corrupt? Probably. Are all of them like that? No. Okay. They they want you, the workers, to be happy and to get what's good for you, what's coming for you. Because remember, if you don't make money, they're not going to be making money. If you're not happy, then they're not going to be happy with their union, and they can easily drop them and go somewhere else. You know. So the thing is, early unions had little to no power because there was only about 300,000 members, which is not enough. especially in the East Coast area. For a whole East Coast side, just 300,000, that's not big at all. The other thing is companies refuse to bargain with them because they're like, what are you guys going to do? You're small. You can't do anything to us. You have no teeth. You have no umph. So they kind of brush them off to the side. And if they try to use the law saw them as conspirators who are trying to ruin America, trying to ruin our system of economy. Um, it's like they're trying to make the workers have a better situation than what they're given by their bosses, by the factory owners. So how is that bad that a worker shouldn't work 16 hours, basically get like 8 hours to go home, rest, do whatever, they need to do, and then come back. Or even work 18 hours, 20 hours, go home, rest for a little bit, and come back. So no, and then get paid dirt cheap. No overtime, no vacation days, none of that stuff. You just got off work, you went home for a little bit, you rested, and you went right back, you know. So again, unions do get a bad rep, but they've done a lot. All right, so now with the northern states expanding both in land and population, there is a problem because now they're basically slitting their own throat when it comes to agriculture and food because now they don't have enough land for that to feed all those people. So now they have to buy their food elsewhere. Now in the south, they are a complete 180 of the north. The north now has like a lot of cities, things like that, big cities. The south does not. They have very few cities. Um, they probably have maybe one, two big cities in the whole state. Um, they had even fewer factories. Okay, they really didn't want to have a large section for a factory because they saw that as wasted land. You can grow crops on that land. Oh, that land is so fertile. You can do this and that. You can grow whatever. Oh, every year you're losing this much. You're not yielding as high of amount. So it was all about using the land as much as possible. Now, they focused on agriculture and mainly crops. Their cash crops were mainly tobacco, rice, and sugarcane. Now, these things made them money, but the big, big money maker was cotton. Cotton was the best thing to really be grown in the South. Now, Eli Whitney, we talked about him last class or last video if you saw it, with the interchangeable parts. He invented something that he thought maybe would slow down slavery. He invented this thing called the cotton gin. Now, the cotton gin basically separates the cotton and takes out the seeds. Now this how they did it before this machine. They would have slaves, like maybe like 50 of them, going through cotton, taking out the seeds. So that the cotton was seedless and it was like fluffy and so like that because they tore through it. Um, thing is, Eli Whitney made this machine, what you see the picture right there. Basically, you get cotton, you put in there, you spin the thing, the uh, the cotton would separate, and then the seeds would drop. You know, and once that happened, the you can gather seeds and plant. Have seeds for next season. The cotton would be clean and ready to go, and it would take the job. What 50 people do would maybe take 5 people if they had those machines to do the same amount of work as 50 people, and it would take less time. Now, a lot of inventions that have been made in history have been made for good intentions, but they backfire. Alfred Nobel creates dynamite, and basically it's used during war and stuff like that, and it kills a lot of people. And that's where he decided to use his money to create the Nobel Peace Prize. Um, Another one would be the Gatlin, James Gatlin. He created this gun that he thought in the Civil War would basically scare one side to be like, okay, you know what, we're not going to mess with it. That's a powerful weapon, but it only made the Civil War more bloodier. Okay, and same thing with the cotton gin. He had good intentions. He figured if we have this machine and it's and these slave owners are like, well, this machine does what 50 slaves used to do. You know, oh, what am I gonna do? And now I have all these slaves, so I won't have to buy anymore because I already have these guys. So he tried to slow down the flow of slavery, but again, it backfired. Okay, and we'll be getting to that in a second. So 2/3 of the total crops that were sent out from the United States was cotton. And now in the South, still to this day, they will say, if you ask them which crop is king, they will always tell you cotton. Cotton is king. All right, so here is your midpoint question. Why do you think the invention of the cotton gin made slavery worse? So think about it, really, really contemplate it. How can um, the cotton gin make slavery worse? Now, if you want to go back to the video and hear that part again, what I was telling you about Eli Whitney, go for it if that helps you out, okay? But just think, put yourself in the slave owner's shoes, okay? How would the cotton gin, how could you exploit the cotton gin and if you had a good number of slaves? Okay, so think about that. Use this. All right, so now with the South making a lot more money, and there's a machine that made it easier to get the seeds of the out of the cotton. A lot of slave owners they saw this as a chance to expand because now they got these 50 slaves used to do that. Now it only takes like 5 to do their work, and now we get the seeds faster, get the cotton cleaner faster. Um, you know what we could do? I could buy more land, plant more seeds, get more slaves, buy more of these cotton gins, and I can make more money quicker, faster, you know. And that's what the thing. Slaves were bought now at a record pace. Um, you have to remember, from the very beginning of the slave trade up until 1820, there was 1.5 million slaves, and in just 30 years, it's doubled from 1.5 to 3.2 slaves in the South. Now, to break that down, that basically means out of every 100 people in the South, um, 37 of them were slaves. That is a huge number. Okay. Um, Now, here's the thing many of the small farmers who didn't have slaves now with the cotton gin now they were able to make more money, so then they could expand. And when they expanded, they were like, "Well, I need more help." So then they started buying some slaves. Okay, so now even the small farmers are starting to get into the slave business. Um, Also, slaves were now starting to change. Now there was like house slaves, right? Um, and you have to remember they didn't let them dress in dirty rags and things like that. No, they had them dress nice because it's all about presentation for them. Their houses, their dresses, their parties, and their servants in the household were meant to look a certain way. So they didn't want them torn looking and sickly. They wanted them healthy. They wanted them looking nice. So they made sure they had better clothing and that they were fed. So now we're going to go over a couple things that the slaves could not do. One thing they could not do was own property, not even a pencil. They couldn't own anything. Um, they couldn't leave their master's presence without their permission. you know. So if a master was walking through and he was just going about his business, they didn't have to ask for permission. But if he stopped in their area and was like looking over what they were doing, some of that, and they wanted to leave for some reason, go to the bathroom or whatever, they had to ask him or her for permission to leave. Okay, just imagine that. Like, um, again, like I said, the master was going through, that's fine. They didn't have to ask for permission. But if he was there standing, they had to ask, Sir, can I move? Sir, can I go to the restroom? Master, can I go to the restroom? Things like that. Okay. Now, these next two things are, I think, just horrid. But the last one is truly horrid. Um, they couldn't testify against a white person in court because to a lot of white people, their word was less than nothing. Okay, so let's say their master got killed by another white man. They could not testify saying, "Oh, that guy killed my master," because to the jury, they're like, "You're nothing. You're not even." And I hate to say it, but they kind of saw them as less than human. You know, because if they did see them as human, like truly humans, they should know then the barbarism of how they're treating these people. So a lot of them didn't see them that way. They just saw them as property. You know, and that I guess helped them deal or do what they did. By not seeing African Americans or Black people as humans. And in court, you know, a witness is a witness. But because they didn't see it that way, the Black people were treated like they didn't see nothing. They're probably lying. You know, their word is worth nothing. This last one is the one that really gets me. Okay, again, as a teacher, educator, I care about education. I care about you guys. I want you guys to learn and prosper in life, and I want to be a part of that. Okay, and so this next one just really gets me, and that's that it was forbidden for slaves to read and write. Okay, they were purposely meant to be taught none of this stuff. You know, there's a comedian, Chris Rock. He said something to the effect that the first black drug dealer didn't sell drugs; he sold books. And it's funny because it's probably true. They probably had books and they try to smuggle it through. Like, hey, I got this book. You want to read this thing? Or I can teach you how to read. And that's a smuggler. Breaking the law. And reading and writing was breaking the law back then for African Americans. So, you know, it's sad, but it's true. Now, one of the most famous escaped slaves was that man right there on the picture. His name was Frederick Douglass. Now, he was born a slave, and when he got his freedom, he became one of the leaders of the anti-slavery movement, which would later be called abolitionist. Now, he wrote a book, and like I said, they weren't allowed to read and write, but his book is amazing, an amazing book, and his speeches were so well written, so well um, delivered. His vocabulary is extraordinary for somebody who was not taught to read and write at a young age. His his style and his vocabulary was extensive and it was amazing. So his book, again, My Bondage and My Freedom, sold huge amounts of copies in Britain and all over Europe. Um, Now, the thing is, last year I heard a lot of students telling Mr. Martinez, if I was a slave back then, I'd have been like, I would have done this, I would have done that, and so there's a lot of I would have done this, I would have done that, and I'm like, no, you wouldn't. You would have got your ankles busted, and that was it, you know. But there was some things that slaves did to their masters, some violent, some non-violent. One non-violent tactic was this thing called a slowdown. Basically, let's say the slave owner had a bunch of land. Now, the thing is, if this section of the field, um, the crops were dying, they would purposely slow down on this side so that those crops would die. Now, the slave owners would, of course, punish these people and they would beat them and things like that. But you have to remember, they're so used to being beaten that it's like nothing to them. They're like, I'll take the hits, but you are going to hurt more because you care about money. That's all you care about. And this is going to hurt you a lot more than it's going to hurt me. All right. Another thing that happened was they would burn the houses in barns. They really did. You know, the most um, the one that they really tried and was famous, or I should say that was popular, was running away. Simply running away. As soon as it got dark, you left. Okay. Um, some killed their masters. Some tried to. Okay. And you have to remember, they didn't just take a gun and just, they didn't do that. Because that caused noise and distraction. They wanted to get as far away as possible. Okay. Now, in the North, about 200,000 slaves lived there, and they set up churches to share their stories, gain sympathy, and some got jobs, to make money. But then they would share their experiences with people in the North. And so a lot of people in the North, they heard about these things, and now here's a person with first-hand account of what life was really like. All right, now I know this video is long, and I do apologize, but you know, here is your last thing, is the question. Why would it be important for the slave owners to make sure that slaves couldn't read or write? Why would that be important? Okay, so think about it. There's a writing prompt, and then write it down. Why would it be important for slave owners to be sure that their slaves could not read or write? All right, so that's the end of this video. I hope you learned something new in this class. Um, Now, next class, we'll be talking more about the Mexican-American War and why the Americans felt they needed to expand west. And again, like I said, Mexico's in the way, and we'll find out how it all started, why it started it, and what the U.S. got out of it. Okay, so you guys have a good day. Take care. Be safe.